Welcome everyone to our third topic in our series. That is our Tulane Talks series. That is a set of topics to encourage families to discuss some really important matters before your student arrives on campus in August. This topic is alcohol and drugs, responsibility, well-being, and recovery. And I am really pleased to introduce to you my wonderful colleagues from across campus who all have some stake in how this topic of alcohol and drugs affects our community. So they are Jacob Goldberg, who is the manager of the Tulane Recovery Community, Leah Patton, who is a health promotion specialist in our Student Health Center, Tyner, who's the Assistant Dean of Students, and Christopher Zacharda, who's the Director of the Office of Student Conduct. And so Tyner is going to start our webinar.
Hi, welcome to Tulane and welcome to this webinar. We're offering this webinar in order to provide you with some vital information so that you and your student as a family can begin having conversations this summer about alcohol and other drugs. We hope these family conversations can be used to set your student up for success as they arrive at Tulane in August. Our goal is for students to be safe and healthy so they can focus on their studies and have positive experiences while at Tulane and while in New Orleans. As the Assistant Dean of Students and former Director of Case Management and Victim Support Services, I've seen how problems with alcohol and other drugs affect students' lives, their community and personal relationships, their health, and their academic progress. Alcohol and drug use and misuse are significant issues on any university campus across the country. Here at Tulane, this can be complicated or compounded by the culture of New Orleans and our kind of culture of celebration. This can create some challenges, some distractions, and some risks. So tonight, our panelists will discuss Tulane's expectations regarding alcohol and other drugs, how we provide education so our students can make safer, responsible choices, and the robust supports that we provide to students in recovery or students curious about recovery. And so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Christopher Zacharda, who is the Director of our Office of Student Conduct.
Great, thank you so much. So yes, my name is Dr. Zacharda. I'm the Director of Student Conduct at Tulane. I've been with Tulane for about 5.5 years. And part of my responsibility as the director is to make sure that the university's behavioral expectations are clear to all of our students and their families, as well as any guests or other affiliates. And we do that through the Code of Student Conduct. The Code of Student Conduct is the document by which the university defines our behavioral expectations for all of our students. That includes undergraduate, graduate, professional school, part-time, online. So even from day one of matriculation, which is where we are right now, all the way through graduation, again, even law school and medical school. The Code of Conduct also applies off campus certainly as well as on campus. And so our expectation is that our students are abiding by the tenets of that code regardless of location, whether it's in a residence hall or a classroom or a dining hall or at an event or an activity, but it also extends off campus. That could include in the neighborhoods or in any of the restaurants or bars in New Orleans, music clubs. That could also include fraternity and sorority or other off-campus events or parties. So the code applies equally on and off campus. It's really important that students and their families are aware of that. The code also applies during periods of break. That can include summer break or winter break, or when a student decides to take a break from being at Tulane, whether that's a medical leave or some other leave of absence. That also includes study abroad programs, which are very popular with our students. Some of the examples of prohibited behaviors that are outlined in our code include the things that you would expect, like fraud or fake IDs. So it is not only a violation of laws in the state of Louisiana, but it's also a violation of our Code of Student Conduct to be in possession and or to use a fake ID. Things like assault or fights, theft or damage to property, disorderly conduct. Again, that can be being disorderly in the community, drunk and disorderly, or being loud and causing some sort of ruckus or other commotion in the community that is disturbing our neighbors. We want to make sure that the relationship that Tulane enjoys with the city of New Orleans and surrounding areas is as strong as ever. And so we want to make sure that our students that are in the neighborhoods are being good ambassadors and being good neighbors. The code also outlines the prohibited behaviors related to sexual harassment, sexual assault, intimate partner violence, stalking, sexual exploitation. Today, specifically, we're going to focus on the expectations related to drug or alcohol use. And so in the state of Louisiana, in the city of New Orleans, and at Tulane's campus, it is unlawful and against the code for a student to be in possession of and or use alcohol if that individual is under the age of 21. It's especially noteworthy that there are times during the year that the university will designate a high priority period. Again, it's called high priority period. And during that high priority period, which we might see that take effect during orientation, we might see that go into effect during inclement weather, or heaven forbid that we are expecting a tropical storm or a tornado. So during periods of high priority, the university's expectations become even stricter in that we are a dry campus. There are no events that can be sponsored with alcohol, and individuals that are found to have violated the alcohol policy during periods of high priority, the outcomes or sanctions, the consequences are more severe. So again, it's very important to understand that during periods of high priority, which include orientation, that if students are found to be in violation of the alcohol policy, they will be facing higher outcomes, which could include at a minimum disciplinary probation, which would prevent them from joining certain clubs or fraternities or sororities, would impact their ability to study abroad. Also, not surprisingly, in the state of Louisiana, as well as in the city of New Orleans and on Tulane's campus, illegal drugs are prohibited as well. And that does include marijuana for the campus of Tulane, regardless of what a student's home state laws dictate. The state of Louisiana does still prohibit the illegal possession or use of marijuana, as does, again, Tulane University. The drug and alcohol policy, as well as the code, also goes on to explain some other kinds of prohibited behaviors that can include a phenomenon that is called whippets or other inhalants, in which individuals are inhaling substances with the expectation to in some way be intoxicated or some altered state. Again, the other sort of scheduled or controlled drugs, cocaine and heroin, also prohibited, as well as the illegal use of prescription medication. And so if individuals are misusing prescription medication, or they're sharing prescription medication with individuals that have not been prescribed that medication, or if they are selling their own medication to others, or buying medication from individuals in which they have not been prescribed, all of those behaviors are prohibited by the Code of Conduct at Tulane. And I say all of that because we want to make sure that all of our students are starting off on the right foot, and that they are making good choices, and that you're having conversations with your students, with our students, before they get here, about what our expectation and your expectation is as it relates to drugs or alcohol. Because again, we want them to start in good standing and remain in good standing through the duration of their Tulane career, and we want to help them make good choices. And so what I'll end with is, you'll see on the screen the purpose statement for the Office of Student Conduct is: we cultivate personal growth and social responsibility by guiding students to understand the impact of their behaviors and their choices. And so with that, I will turn it over to my next colleague, which I believe is Leah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Leah Patton. I work as a health promotion specialist in the Student Health Center. and I largely focus on education about alcohol and other drugs. There are quite a few ways in which your student will get education, preventative education about alcohol and other drugs, including starting right now during the summer. So before any students come to Tulane, they go through a educational module online. It's called Alcohol EDU. They will be doing that shortly. And that is just a little series about alcohol and some education on it. And then as soon as they're on campus during the new student orientation, there is a program called Live Well at Tulane. And that goes over, it largely focuses on alcohol, but also talks about other substances. It goes over how to stay safe, how to help out your friends, how to recognize and respond in an emergency or dangerous situation. It's honestly a pretty fun presentation. A lot of students like it, and they'll get that in the first week that they're on campus. And then, as you move through, their years here at Tulane, there are a couple of other times that they'll definitely end up with alcohol and other substance education. One of them is, should they want to be part of a fraternity or sorority? If they're a potential new member, they'll go through a course about alcohol and other drugs. They will, if they become an athlete, if your student's an athlete, we have a specific presentation that we go into the different athletic teams and talk to them about alcohol and other drugs. And then there are other workshops that, you might just, your student might see in a class, maybe their first year seminar, or, another student group that they belong to. And then we have a fair amount of events throughout the year that have education as well. And we focus a lot on kind of what we call high risk times. So that might look like, for us, it might be Mardi Gras, it might be spring break, it might be another holiday like New Year's or Halloween, where we're particularly concentrating some efforts to get some education and, some preventative information out there. We also have a pretty active Instagram. Some of these images that you see on the screen, they actually, all of the ones that aren't the actual photos of humans, they're all from our Instagram. We like to do little things like creating a Mardi Gras survival kit, so all of our students are prepared for something that they maybe haven't experienced before. And we also try our best to do some programming involved around like alcohol-free spaces or activities. So making mocktails, which are non-alcoholic drinks, or sharing recipes for those is also something that we really like to do for our students. I also say that we have a group here on campus called the Tulane University Peer Health Educators, and they talk about a lot of topics involved with, health and well-being, but they do largely focus also on alcohol and other drugs. And they are just a really invaluable part of our community here because they are peers. So they're fellow Tulaneans, fellow students that can talk to other students on campus. And that's just another way that, some students prefer to get education about these topics, which is another way they might listen to someone. And so our toughs, as they're known, are often out on campus just about every other week, doing some type of activity or tabling, like you would see up on that top left photo. They'll be out throughout campus doing activities like that. And then I'll go ahead and pass it off. I believe it's Jacob up next.
Thank you, Leah. Hello, everybody. My name is Jacob Goldberg. I use he, series pronouns. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and licensed addictions counselor. And I'm in charge of the Tulane recovery community. I'd first like to say thank you for logging on to this or for viewing this. At one point, it shows some care and some involvement as caregivers, as parents. And we would like to continue to reinforce that hopefully you are having some of these conversations with your students. You have beforehand, and you are currently through the summer about these topics and some ways to prepare to move forward. So I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the Tulane recovery community. I've been at Tulane a little bit, almost 4 years now, and we started the Tulane recovery community our collegiate recovery, I should say, at Tulane in January of 2020. What we do is we support students that self-identify as being in recovery, and that could be a number of different criteria. Largely, though, is someone who's in recovery from a substance use disorder. We also support students that are self-identify as being in recovery from other problematic behaviors, such as eating disorders or any other compulsive issues that come up. We do that through a number of different ways. We have right as of today, or as of the last couple of years, I should say, we've been doing 3 meetings a week that happen throughout the academic year. We also have meetings that happen even when the university is closed and over the summer. We have different types of recovery support meetings. We have an all recovery meeting that is a non-denominational recovery support meeting. We support a 12-step meeting on campus. And we also do a yoga and recovery meeting. So it offers some experiential movement and support for students through that lens. We have a big component like some of Leah's area is our peer support model. So we have a large group of students, a fairly large group of students we have that participate regularly in our weekly meetings. And so it's really not uncommon for a new student to come to a meeting, or a new student that's just coming to Tulane and easily get plugged in and get connected to some students that are already established in their recovery, can give them some peer support and maybe share some of their experience and strength and things that's worked for them in those ways. So I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity to be able to have a platform that is able to have such a impactful experience on some of our students. We also have, so you're seeing some of these pictures on the screen. We do scheduled social events throughout the year. At minimum, we have one a month that happens through the recovery community. But oftentimes there's meetups and social events and things that are happening that the students do on their own that we help support. Particularly, we have some sentinel events that happen again during some high-risk areas. You can see some of these pictures of skiing, and actually, the picture on the left-hand corner is from Santa Fe, New Mexico, this past Mardi Gras. And then down in the center, there's a picture of a group of us eating during spring break. So we've taken trips during Mardi Gras. We've taken trips during spring break. We have partnered with a lot of community providers here in New Orleans. Even though, as Kat mentioned, that we are a city of excess, we can be. We also have a large recovery community here in New Orleans, and they're there to support our community here at Tulane as well. So just some of the things that we've gone and done this past year is we've partnered with other schools. We've been to Renaissance Fest, we've been to rodeos, we've done fishing trips, we've gone to Pelicans games, we've gone with Campus Rec, we've gone canoeing and hiking, we've gone roller skating. We're involved in the National Collegiate Recovery organization known as ARAHE. We've gone to those conferences, and in fact, I'll be going up to Ohio State next week for the National Collegiate Recovery Conference. Yeah, we've done Jazz Fest kickoffs. Really just a lot of fun stuff. Again, there is this is just a very small segment of some of the programming that the university offers that doesn't involve substance. There's a lot of programming that comes out of our LBC, which is basically our student union of sorts, that offers some alternative programming that is not involved with any kind of substance. And be mindful of our time, and I want to say this, that we're experiencing a lot of growth in the recovery community, where we just what we'd be opening in the fall is our dedicated space, which is really close to campus, that really backs up to campus. And so the university has purchased a large home, a 4,700 square foot home, and it's going to be our Tulane Recovery Community Center. We are operationalizing it right now. So we will be adding more meetings per week. We'll be offering a meditation meeting. We'll be offering gender-specific support groups. We'll be likely offering some eating concern support groups as well. And then also be a space for students to stop in, study, safe space to come and talk to somebody. Also, just to be able to have a space for someone who self-identifies as being in recovery. And eventually, it's going to be a phased approach of opening the center. Likely year 2, if not a little sooner, we'll be adding a recovery housing opportunity there to have a structured sober living. We'll have a live-in house manager and be able to offer that resource to our students in our community. So there's probably some other things I'd love to talk to you about. And I think we will all say this at the end, but Penny, you can easily find me if you're interested in talking offline. You can look up my name on any of the Tulane websites. My email address and my direct cell phone is available. I'm happy to connect with you and or your students at any time. So with that, I'll think I'm passing it to Penny.
Yes, so we wanted you to know that there is a specific guide that has been developed by our health promotion area, again, the WELL, and it's part of our campus health organization. And so we will post this with the webinar recording online, and it's a Tulane parent guide for talking with your student about alcohol. We may have some students who are here on the call, but we know most of the participants are parents or guardians or other family members. And we want to support you in launching these conversations with your student to give you some background, some conversation starters. So we want you to know that we're encouraging you to do this, but we are supporting you to do it too, with some information and guidance. You'll be able to access that document. And then another thing that we like to show our families is just this quick outline of how the students will learn more. So Leah did a good job of explaining what her area does. And there are also these other university departments that, as I said, have a stake in this. And you heard from some of those people already this evening. And then there are services, outreach efforts, and signature programs, some of which have been mentioned. So the other thing that I would have you note is that in addition to the Tulane University peer health educators that Leah mentioned, there's some other student paraprofessionals and peer mentors who also get some training on how to recognize issues, how to make referrals, how to support students, and how to get them connected. So in addition to the peer health educators, all of the peer mentors for the first year seminars, either the TIDES course or the honors course, the honors seminar that a first year student might take, to the resident advisors who live on the residence hall floors and offer all kinds of support to students, are trained to, at minimum, refer students to the professional staff on campus, and also to just know how to get students connected. So we want you to know that it doesn't stop with orientation. They are kind of living in these resources, and it's always surrounding and supporting them. So we want you to just be reassured that this is something that's going on throughout the year. But we do hope that your student takes very seriously that educational module that they do as part of orientation over the summer, and that you can have a conversation before they even arrive to address this and lay that foundation for them to have a successful time here at Tulane. So now is the time for you to submit questions. So we'll ask you to go ahead and type those in, and then I'll go through those and pose them to the various panelists who are the best folks to answer those. And if there turns out to be a question that we can't get to, we'll follow up in an email, either with that individual or in a follow-up message to everyone. So please go ahead and type in some questions. I'm not seeing any yet, so I want to invite you to go ahead and submit those. So we'll give you a moment to think about that. I'll ask our panelists, were there any other things that you didn't mention that you want to take a moment to do now?
I would say, we have, like Penny said, we have so many resources here for our students to help support them. So if you have a student who is arriving at Tulane, who you may be concerned about, the transition to college, or they may receive, they may work with a therapist at home, or they may have had issues with alcohol or other drugs, or just any concerns that you have, to make sure to connect with us over the summer. And the best way to do that is by reaching out to one of us, or Jacob or I, or calling the Office of Case Management, who can be a really valuable support system for you and your student.
Thank you for saying that, Kat. I knew I had something I wanted to share. There's lots of things I'd like to share, but one thing I'd like to mention as one of the resources that we do have embedded in the university is we have a full-time therapist that works in our counseling center that is dedicated to working with students around alcohol and other substances. That's a therapist we all work with the counseling center folks, especially in case management and through the Dean of Students office. But it is nice that the university has allocated the resource to be able to have full-time therapists specifically around that subject line. And so that is something we can get you connected to if you're interested before the semester starts.
Penny, a few things that I can address as well. And then I see we have our first question, which is probably for me anyway. Sometimes we get questions about how to report if either I'm concerned or a student is concerned about another student. What does that reporting look like? And does the university offer amnesty? And so I thought I'd answer both of those questions in anticipation. Any individual, a family member, a parent, a student, faculty or staff can submit a concerns report, and it's quite simply tulane.edu/concerns. And so that's a really easy tool, and anyone can submit a concern about another Tulane entity, a student, a faculty member, or a staff member. And that is what comes to, as Catherine Tyner was talking about, that will get the Dean of Students office, the Office of Student Conduct, or Case Management and Victim Support Services in connection with that individual, if it's a student that needs some support. And then as it relates to amnesty, if an individual calls for help, calls either our police office or a TUPD or an RA or a resident director or our Tulane Emergency Medical Services, because somebody else needs help, they've been drinking or using marijuana, yes, that individual that made the call, as well as the individual that imbibed or engaged in that marijuana or alcohol use, those individuals would not face conduct action. Instead, they may meet with a case manager that would walk them through, well, how do we, what can we learn from this, making sure that we're making safe choices. The question that's been posed is, what is the university doing specifically for, we talked about alcohol usage, but specifically with whippets. So again, for those of you not familiar with whippets, whippets is a form of inhalant. They are sold in stores. You can order them online, and they are a means of a quick, cheap high. It is very short term in terms of the high itself, but there are some potential lingering medical concerns. And so the university, as part of its pre-matriculation courses that look at drug and alcohol use for all of our new incoming students, there will be some information that is provided to those new students about the dangers of misuse of alcohol and the dangers of using intoxicants and other prohibited items, including whippets. We have also, for this first year going forward, put in the code itself that whippets in particular are prohibited on campus as well as in the residence halls. And we've been partnering with fraternities and sororities as well for some educational campaigns for those groups that may be hosting social events either on campus or off campus in their fraternity or sorority locations, or at other locations throughout the university. So we are deliberately doing a campaign on the use of whippets and the dangers of the use of whippets that, again, will start as early as July with our incoming students. We do not necessarily refer them to the state. We're not required to refer them to law enforcement, although if law enforcement is involved, students may also, in addition to facing consequences through the Code of Student Conduct, there may also be misdemeanor or even felony, depending on the alcohol or on the drug. They could also be facing criminal charges with the police. But no, we're not required to refer to state authorities for violations of the university's drug or alcohol policy, or for drug or alcohol violations.
Thank you, Chris. So we want to give a last call again for any further questions, and encourage you to type those in if you have questions at this point. So if there are no other questions, I'll just remind you that we still have another webinar in our Tulane Talks series, and that's on academics, which is next week on Wednesday. And that is also on the webinars and tutorials page on the website, so you can register for that if you'd like. And then we'll have other webinars that are not part of this series, but on other topics, such as the hurricane preparedness and the crime reporting information webinar in July. So do think about joining us for those, and then keep in mind if the webinar time date doesn't suit you, you'll be able to access the information later online. So we are grateful to everyone who presented tonight, and to all of you who joined us for this. And we wish you a great evening, and see you at the next webinar. Thank you, everyone.